Welcome to the Art of Letting Go. This series is about shedding the weights that hold us back. Before we dive into our first episode, just a quick heads up that while we're exploring emotional well-being, this isn't medical or mental health advice. So please consult with a professional for your specific needs. Today, we're unpacking the very idea of letting go and exploring why it matters so much.
That's right, Alex. We all carry things, moments, regrets, expectations, relationships. Some of these burdens are heavy and they can really weigh us down, preventing us from experiencing the present fully. So, why is it so hard to let them go?
It's a fundamental human challenge, isn't it? We're wired to hold on, to protect ourselves, and often what we cling to feels like a part of our identity. Think about it. Our memories, our experiences, even our pain, they shape who we believe we are. Letting go can feel like losing a piece of ourselves.
That makes sense. It's like we've invested so much time and emotional energy into these things, into these beliefs, that the thought of releasing them is daunting. It can feel like admitting defeat or like we're erasing our past.
Exactly. And that's where the misunderstanding often lies. Letting go isn't about forgetting or dismissing the past. It's not about pretending something didn't happen or that it didn't matter. Instead, it's about acknowledging the past without allowing it to dictate your present or your future. It's about processing and then consciously choosing to release the corrosive energy attached to it.
So, it's more about unburdening ourselves rather than discarding a part of our history. I like that distinction. What kind of weights are we usually talking about when we discuss letting go?
The categories are vast, but we can group them. We carry the weight of past hurts, disappointments, and betrayals. We carry the weight of unmet expectations, both for ourselves and from others. There's the weight of what we think we should have done or what we wish had happened. And then there's the weight of our own self-judgment, our internal critics that replay mistakes endlessly.
Oh, the self-judgment. That one can be a tough one to shake. It's like having a little voice constantly whispering in your ear, reminding you of every wrong turn.
It truly is. And when we hold on to these things, these hurts, these regrets, these judgments, they don't just float away. They become a part of our internal landscape. They can manifest as anxiety, bitterness, a constant feeling of being stuck, or even physical ailments. Our emotional baggage can have a very real, tangible impact on our well-being.
So, the act of letting go is really an act of self-care, a pathway to reclaiming our energy and our present moment. It sounds like a crucial skill for a fulfilling life.
Absolutely. Imagine trying to run a race with a heavy backpack filled with rocks. You'd be significantly slowed down, your energy depleted, and your progress hampered. Letting go is like taking off that backpack. It doesn't mean you didn't carry it, or that the journey you took with it wasn't real. It just means you're no longer burdened by its weight.
That's a powerful illustration, Alex. It makes it clear that holding on can be a choice, and releasing can also be a choice. But it's not always an easy one. What are some of the initial hurdles people face when they even consider letting go?
One of the biggest hurdles is the fear of the unknown. When we're attached to something, even if it's painful, it's familiar. We know what to expect from it. Letting go can create a void, and that uncertainty can be frightening. Will I be okay? What will happen?
That's a very relatable fear. It's like being in a familiar, albeit uncomfortable, situation, and the idea of stepping out into completely new territory is overwhelming.
Another significant hurdle is the feeling of obligation or perceived duty. We might feel we owe it to someone to hold on to a grievance, or we might believe that not letting go is a sign of loyalty to a person, a memory, or even an ideal. This often comes up in relationships, where people feel bound to past promises or perceived slights.
And sometimes we just don't know how to let go. It feels like a nebulous concept. Is there a specific technique, or is it more of a mindset shift?
It's definitely a combination. It involves a conscious decision, as we've discussed, but it also requires developing specific practices and a different perspective. We'll be exploring various tools and approaches. We'll delve into understanding our attachments, confronting challenging emotions, and building resilience. We'll look at how forgiveness plays a role, not just for others, but for ourselves.
So, we'll be guiding our listeners through practical steps and deeper understandings of how to actually do this. It's not just about talking about letting go, but about learning how to do it.
Precisely. And it's important to remember that letting go is a process, not a single event. There will be times when you feel you've released something, only for it to resurface later. That's perfectly normal. The key is to approach it with patience and self-compassion, recognizing that this is a journey of personal growth.
That's a great point, Alex. It alleviates some of the pressure. It's not about achieving perfect release overnight, but about consistent practice and progress. So, to recap for our listeners, we've talked today about the universal human experience of carrying burdens from the past. These burdens can be hurts, regrets, or unmet expectations, and they weigh us down, hindering our ability to live fully in the present. Letting go isn't about forgetting, but about consciously releasing the corrosive energy attached to these experiences, allowing us to move forward with more freedom. We've also touched on common hurdles like the fear of the unknown and feelings of obligation.
Excellent summary, Lisa. So, why does letting go matter? Because it's the gateway to peace, to growth, and to a more authentic and joyful life. It's about reclaiming your power. It's about making space for new possibilities. Without letting go, we remain tethered to the past, unable to fully embrace the richness of the present and the potential of the future.
It sounds like the first, and perhaps most important, step in any journey of personal transformation. We're really excited to guide listeners through this process.
We are too. Next episode, The Invisible Chains, Understanding Attachment Styles. Welcome back. Last time, we discussed the weight of things we carry. Today, we're exploring the invisible chains that often bind us, our attachment styles.
That's right, Alex. It's not just about what we're holding on to, but how we relate to the act of holding on and the idea of letting go. Our attachment styles, formed early in life, really shape how we approach relationships and how we handle situations where we might need to release something or someone.
Exactly. Think of it like this. Our attachment style is the fundamental blueprint for how we connect with others and how we feel about ourselves in relation to them. These styles are deeply ingrained, and they influence everything from our communication patterns to our comfort levels with intimacy and independence. We'll discuss the four main styles: secure, anxious preoccupied, dismissive avoidant, and fearful avoidant.
And it's important to remember, these aren't rigid boxes people fit into. They're more like tendencies, and we can often see elements of different styles in ourselves at different times. But understanding your dominant style can be incredibly helpful when it comes to letting go.
Absolutely. Let's start with the secure attachment style. People with a secure style generally feel comfortable with both closeness and independence. They tend to have positive views of themselves and others. When faced with a situation that requires letting go, they can usually do so with a sense of balance. They don't typically fear abandonment, nor do they feel overwhelmed by intimacy.
So, someone with a secure attachment style might say, "This situation isn't working for me anymore, and while it's sad, I know I can build something new," without a lot of internal panic or a desperate need to cling. They trust that they can handle being on their own, and they trust that they can form healthy connections again. It's about a healthy connection to oneself, which then extends to others.
Precisely. Now, let's move to the anxious preoccupied style. People with this style often crave high levels of intimacy, approval, and closeness. They can be preoccupied with relationships and tend to worry about their partner's or loved one's commitment. This anxiety can make letting go incredibly difficult.
Ah, I can see how that would be a stumbling block for letting go. If you're constantly worried about being abandoned, the idea of releasing something or someone, even if it's clearly no longer serving you, feels terrifying. It's like, what if this is my only chance at connection, and letting go means I'll end up completely alone?
That's a very relatable fear for someone with an anxious, preoccupied style. They might overfunction in relationships, constantly seeking reassurance. And when it comes time to let go, they might try desperately to hold on, perhaps by making concessions or trying to fix what's broken, even when it's beyond repair. It's a deep-seated fear of not being enough to keep someone or something around.
It highlights that invisible chain, doesn't it? The chain of fear and worry about not being loved or valued. So, if that's the anxious style, what about the avoidant ones?
Great question. We have two avoidance styles. First, the dismissive avoidance style. Individuals with this style tend to be highly independent and self-reliant. They often feel uncomfortable with closeness and may downplay the importance of relationships. They might suppress their feelings and appear emotionally distant.
This sounds like the opposite of anxious, but still a challenge for letting go, perhaps in a different way. If someone is used to being very self-sufficient and maybe even uncomfortable with deep emotional connection, why would they struggle to let go?
That's a key point, Lisa. While they may not cling in the same way as the anxious style, their tendency to distance themselves can prevent them from fully processing the need to let go in the first place. They might avoid the emotional work entirely, pushing things away before they even become a problem. Or, when a relationship or situation ends, they might shut down emotionally, appearing unfazed on the surface, but not truly processing the loss or the need for release. They might see emotional expression as a weakness.
So, letting go for them isn't about fear of abandonment, but perhaps a fear of getting too close, of vulnerability, or of the messy emotions that come with endings. They might simply disengage rather than actively choose to release.
That's a good way to put it. And then we have the fourth style, the fearful avoidant, sometimes called the disorganized attachment style. This is a bit more complex. Individuals with this style often have a fear of both intimacy and rejection. They may desire close relationships, but struggle with knowing how to achieve them. Their behavior can be unpredictable, and they often vacillate between seeking closeness and pushing people away.
Oh, that sounds like a really challenging place to be. It's like being caught between two opposing forces. You want connection, but you're terrified of getting hurt or rejected, so you push it away, which then confirms your fear of not being able to have connection.
Precisely. For someone with a fearful avoidance style, letting go can be incredibly confusing and painful. They might desperately want to hold on to something, only to sabotage it because of their underlying fear. Or they might push something away, then regret it and try to pull it back, creating a cycle of emotional turmoil. The invisible chains here are the conflicting desires and deep-seated fears of hurt.
This really drives home how our attachment styles, formed so early in life, can create patterns that make letting go feel like an insurmountable task. It's not just a simple decision, it's tangled up with our deepest sense of self and our fundamental beliefs about connection and safety.
Absolutely. And the important takeaway here is that understanding your dominant attachment style isn't about labeling yourself or feeling stuck. It's about gaining self-awareness. When you understand why letting go might be harder for you, you can begin to develop strategies to navigate those challenges. For instance, someone with an anxious, preoccupied style might work on building their self-soothing skills and recognizing that letting go doesn't automatically mean abandonment.
And someone with a dismissive avoidance style might practice allowing themselves to feel and express their emotions, even when it feels uncomfortable, to truly process endings. For the fearful avoidant, it might involve seeking professional support to untangle those conflicting needs and fears.
Exactly. Recognizing these patterns is the first crucial step. It's the foundation for building healthier ways of relating to ourselves and those around us, which ultimately makes the act of letting go less about loss and more about liberation. We're not destined to repeat the same patterns forever. Awareness is the beginning of change.
So, We've identified the invisible chains of our attachment styles: the secure, the anxious preoccupied, the dismissive avoidant, and the fearful avoidant. Each style presents unique challenges and tendencies when it comes to letting go, often rooted in deeper fears and desires about connection and self-worth. Understanding these styles is the first powerful step toward loosening those chains.
Next episode, the trap of what if and how the sunk cost fallacy keeps us holding on to things long after they've stopped serving us. Welcome back. Last time, we explored the invisible chains of attachment styles, understanding how past experiences shape our present connections. Today, we're tackling a particularly sticky trap, the sunk cost fallacy.
That's right, Alex. It's that feeling of being stuck, not because moving forward is impossible, but because we feel too invested in what we've already put in. It's the psychological phenomenon that makes us say, well, I've already spent so much time on this, I can't give up now, even when it's clearly not working.
Exactly. Think about it. You've poured hours into a project, maybe a leaky faucet repair, and it's still not fixed. But you've bought 3 different kinds of sealant, watched countless videos, and your hands are now pruners from all the water. You're tempted to keep going, not because you're suddenly a master plumber, but because you can't bear the thought of all that wasted effort.
That's a great, albeit slightly painful, analogy. And it's not just about tangible things like plumbing or money. The sunk cost fallacy often applies to our relationships, our careers, our personal goals, even our grudges. We've invested so much emotional energy, so much time, that the idea of walking away feels like admitting defeat or, worse, admitting that all that investment was for nothing.
And that's precisely the trap. The fallacy convinces us that more investment will somehow make the past investment worthwhile. It's like throwing good money after bad, or in our context, holding on to a painful memory or an unfulfilling path because we've already spent so much time feeling awful or stuck. It prevents us from letting go, which is the very essence of what we're exploring.
So, remember when we talked about attachment styles in the last episode? How we might cling to relationships or situations due to fear of abandonment or a deep need for security. The sunk cost fallacy feeds into that. If we're attached to a certain outcome because of the time and emotion we've already invested, it becomes even harder to detach, even if that attachment is causing us pain. It's like our past efforts have created an invisible tether.
That's a perfect way to put it, an invisible tether. And this tether can keep us bound to unproductive paths. Imagine someone staying in a job they detest, not because they can't find another, but because they've been there for 10 years. They think, 10 years of my life. I can't just leave and start over. But what about the next 10 years? Will they be any happier if they're still in that same unfulfilling role?
That's the core question, isn't it? We're essentially allowing the past to dictate our future, holding on to something because of what it cost us, rather than what it's offering us moving forward. It's a backward-looking mindset, and letting go requires us to shift our gaze forward.
Absolutely. This fallacy often makes us irrationally optimistic about prospects that are clearly bleak, simply because we've already committed resources. We might rewatch a terrible movie because we're already halfway through it, or keep trying to fix a failing project because we've already sunk so much effort into it, convincing ourselves that if we just try one more time, it'll all work out.
It's like the more effort we put into something that's clearly not working, the more we try to justify that initial decision. We dig in our heels, not because it's the right thing to do, but because we're trying to validate our past choices. And this can extend to holding on to hurts. If someone has deeply wronged us, and we've spent years feeling anger and resentment, the sunk cost fallacy might whisper, "You can't let this go now. You've been angry for so long. What would that even mean?"
That's a powerful point, Lisa. Holding on to anger and resentment is a significant emotional investment. Letting them go can feel like abandoning a part of ourselves, a part that was forged in that hurt. But that anger, that resentment, is a form of sunk cost. It's an ongoing expenditure of emotional energy that prevents us from moving towards peace and healing.
So, to combat this, we really need to separate our past investments from our future decisions. The time, money, or emotion we've already spent is gone. It cannot be recovered by throwing more into what isn't working. The only resource we can control is our future investment.
Exactly. We need to ask ourselves, if I were starting from scratch today, knowing what I know now, would I choose to invest in this path, this relationship, this situation? If the answer is no, then the amount of past investment becomes irrelevant. The decision should then be based on the future potential, the future cost, and the future benefit.
That's a crucial reframing. It's about future orientation rather than past justification. It's easy to get caught in the loop of, I've already done so much, but the real liberation comes from recognizing that the best use of my future energy is to redirect it elsewhere.
And this is where confronting the sunk cost fallacy directly ties into the art of letting go. It's about acknowledging that some investments, unfortunately, don't pay off. And that's okay. It's a lesson learned, not a failure that defines us. The true cost isn't the initial investment, but the ongoing cost of continuing down a path that no longer serves us.
So, to recap for our listeners, the sunk cost fallacy is our tendency to continue investing in something because of the resources we've already spent, even when it's no longer rational. It's driven by a desire to justify past decisions. To overcome it, we must evaluate future prospects independently of past investments and ask ourselves, given the current reality, would I make this choice today?
It's about freeing ourselves from the weight of past decisions and embracing the possibility of a better future, unburdened by the fallacy that more effort on a lost cause will somehow redeem it. It's a vital step in truly letting go. Next episode, The Power of Release, introducing forgiveness. Welcome back. Last time, we explored the sunk cost fallacy and how clinging to past investments can hold us back. Now, we're introducing a concept that's often misunderstood but incredibly powerful for true release: forgiveness.
Forgiveness. That's a word that can bring up a lot of different feelings, can it? Some people hear it and think about letting someone off the hook, or maybe even condoning their actions. But you're saying it's actually a tool for us, right?
Exactly, Lisa. That's the critical distinction. Forgiveness, in the context of letting go, isn't about excusing behavior or saying what happened was okay. It's not about the other person at all, really. It's about liberating ourselves from the burden of carrying resentment, anger, and pain. Think back to episode 1, where we talked about the weight we carry. Resentment is heavy. Forgiveness is the act of setting that weight down.
So, it's less about saying, I forgive you, and more about saying, I'm choosing to release this hold you have on me.
Precisely. It's a choice, a conscious decision to stop allowing past hurts to dictate our present and future. When we refuse to forgive, we're essentially keeping ourselves tethered to the very thing that caused us pain. We're stuck in a loop, replaying the offense, feeding the anger, and reinforcing the narrative of victimhood. This is where so many of us fall into that sunk cost fallacy again, believing that because we've invested so much emotional energy into being angry, we have to keep holding on to it.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like continuing to pay an emotional toll for something that has already happened and can't be changed. And when we do that, who are we really hurting?
We're hurting ourselves. The person who wronged us may have moved on, or may not even be aware of the depth of our suffering. But we are the ones experiencing the stress, the bitterness, and the emotional exhaustion. Forgiveness is a radical act of self-care. It's reclaiming your peace, your energy, and your mental well-being.
So, it's for our own benefit. But how do we get there? Because sometimes the pain feels so immense, so justified, that the idea of letting it go seems impossible.
It's a process, not an event, and it doesn't happen overnight. The first step, as we've touched upon, is to understand that forgiveness is for you. It's not about condoning, forgetting, or reconciling. Forgetting isn't even necessary. You can forgive someone and still remember what happened and learn from it. Forgiveness is about releasing the emotional charge attached to the memory.
So, I don't have to pretend it didn't happen or that it didn't hurt.
Absolutely not. Acknowledging the hurt is vital. We've discussed grief and loss in this series, and often the act of forgiving is intertwined with processing those emotions. You have to allow yourself to feel the pain, the anger, the sadness. But then you have to ask yourself, am I going to let this pain define me forever? Am I going to carry this burden indefinitely?
When you put it that way, it sounds exhausting to keep carrying it.
It truly is. Think of it like this. Imagine you're holding a hot coal. You're burning your hand, but you keep holding on because you're angry at the person who gave it to you. Forgiveness is simply deciding to drop the coal. The warmth that was causing you pain is released when you let go.
That's a powerful image, Alex. Dropping the hot coal. It's not about the coal being harmless. It's about you choosing not to be burned anymore.
Exactly. And this applies to all kinds of hurts, big or small. It could be a friend who betrayed your trust, a family member who was critical, a colleague who undermined you, or even an institution that let you down. The principle remains the same. Holding on to the anger and the desire for retribution only harms you.
This is episode 4, and we've already talked about the weight we carry and the sunk costs. This concept of forgiveness feels like a natural progression, doesn't it? We've identified the burdens, we've seen how we might be stuck investing in them, and now we're learning a key tool to actually lift them.
It really is. Forgiveness is a cornerstone of letting go. It's the active practice of dismantling the emotional walls that past grievances have built around us. Without it, we can intellectualize letting go all we want, but the emotional residue will keep us tethered.
So, to recap for our listeners, forgiveness isn't about condoning or forgetting. It's a conscious choice to release ourselves from the burden of resentment and anger. It's an act of self-care that allows us to reclaim our peace and energy, much like setting down a heavy weight we've been carrying or dropping a hot coal that's burning us.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. It's a challenging but ultimately liberating path. Next, we will explore forgiveness for ourselves, releasing self-judgment. Welcome back. Last time, we discussed the power of forgiveness. Today, we're turning that powerful lens inward, exploring a form of forgiveness that's often the most challenging, forgiving ourselves.
That's right, Alex. We talked about how holding on to anger or resentment towards others weighs us down. But often, the heaviest chains are the ones we forge ourselves through self-judgment. It's that inner critic, constantly replaying mistakes, highlighting every perceived failure, and whispering doubts about our worth. It can be a massive roadblock to moving forward.
Absolutely. Self-judgment, or being too hard on ourselves, is a pervasive issue. Many of us hold ourselves to impossibly high standards. We might be perfectionists, believing that any mistake is a reflection of fundamental inadequacy. Or perhaps we replay past errors, convinced we should have known better or could have done better. This constant self-recrimination keeps us tethered to the past, preventing us from truly letting go.
It's like we're stuck in a loop of self-criticism. I think about it like this. Imagine you're learning to ride a bike. You're bound to wobble, maybe even fall a few times. If you were to berate yourself after every single wobble, calling yourself clumsy and incapable, would you ever learn to ride? Probably not. You'd be too discouraged to even try again. Forgiving ourselves is about allowing ourselves that same grace we might extend to a beginner.
That's a fantastic analogy, Lisa, and it highlights a key point. Mistakes are not failures, they are learning opportunities. When we judge ourselves harshly for them, we rob ourselves of the very lessons they offer. We prevent ourselves from growing. Forgiveness for ourselves isn't about excusing bad behavior or pretending past actions didn't happen. It's about acknowledging them, understanding them, and then choosing to release the burden of guilt and shame they carry.
So, how do we begin to practice this inward forgiveness? It feels like a big shift, especially if self criticism has been a lifelong companion.
The first step, as with any significant change, is awareness. We need to become aware of our self-critical thoughts. When do they arise? What triggers them? Are you telling yourself, I'm so stupid, or I always mess things up? Simply noticing these patterns without immediate judgment is a powerful start. Think of it as observing a weather pattern. You see the clouds forming, but you don't have to become the storm.
Okay, so noticing the critical voice. Then what? Do we just tell ourselves, be nice?
Not quite. It's more about challenging those thoughts and replacing them with a more balanced, compassionate perspective. Ask yourself, is this thought truly accurate? Is it fair? Would I say this to a dear friend who made the same mistake? Often, our inner critic is far harsher than any external critic would ever be. We then consciously choose to offer ourselves kindness, understanding, and acceptance.
That's a really important question, Alex. The comparison to speaking to a friend really grounds it. I think we're often so quick to forgive our friends' missteps, but we hold ourselves to a much higher, almost impossible standard.
Exactly. And this is where the concept of self-compassion comes in. Self-compassion involves three key elements. First, kindness towards ourselves, recognizing our struggle and offering ourselves warmth. Second, recognizing our common humanity, understanding that suffering, failure, and imperfection are part of the shared human experience. Everyone makes mistakes. And third, mindfulness, observing our negative thoughts and emotions without judgment, allowing them to pass.
So, it's not about being self indulgent, but about being supportive of ourselves during difficult times. It's about understanding that we're doing the best we can with the tools and knowledge we have at any given moment.
Precisely. And this directly relates to letting go of perfectionism. Perfectionism is often fueled by a fear of judgment, both external and internal. It drives us to avoid risks and hide our perceived flaws. Releasing self-judgment allows us to embrace imperfection. It allows us to see that a life lived fully, with all its stumbles and detours, is far richer than a life meticulously guarded against error.
It sounds like a continuous practice. It's not a one time fix.
It absolutely is a practice like building a muscle. The more we exercise self-compassion and challenge our self-judgment, the stronger it becomes. We can start small. For example, when you notice yourself being self-critical after a setback, try to identify one thing you did well or one lesson you learned. Acknowledge your effort, even if the outcome wasn't perfect.
I like that. Focusing on the effort and the learning, rather than just the perceived failure. It reframes the entire experience.
And it helps us to connect with our own humanity. Remember when we discussed attachment styles? Many of us with certain attachment patterns develop a harsh inner critic as a coping mechanism. Learning to forgive ourselves can be a deeply healing process, allowing us to move towards a more secure sense of self. It's about understanding that past hurts or experiences don't define our present worth.
This inner dialogue around forgiveness is so crucial. It's not just about saying sorry to others, it's about offering that same grace and understanding to ourselves. It's about stepping off that treadmill of self criticism and embracing a more accepting and compassionate relationship with ourselves.
Exactly. By releasing self-judgment, we create space for self-acceptance, growth, and ultimately, a deeper sense of peace. We begin to see ourselves not as a project to be constantly fixed, but as a work in progress, worthy of love and understanding exactly as we are. It's about recognizing that you are enough right now.
So, to recap for our listeners, self-judgment is a major obstacle to letting go. It's our inner critic, replaying mistakes and holding us to impossible standards. To practice forgiveness for ourselves, we need to first become aware of these critical thoughts. Then, we challenge them by asking if they're fair and what we'd say to a friend. Embracing self-compassion, kindness, recognizing common humanity, and mindfulness is key. This practice helps us release perfectionism and embrace imperfection, focusing on effort and learning rather than just outcome. It's a continuous journey towards self-acceptance and inner peace.
Beautifully summarized, Lisa. This inward journey is just as vital as releasing external grievances. It's the foundation for truly moving forward with lightness and freedom. Next episode, The Illusion of Control, Embracing Imperfection. Welcome back. Last time, we explored forgiving ourselves. Today, we're tackling the illusion of control and the grip of perfectionism.
Perfectionism. It sounds so aspirational, doesn't it? Like striving for the absolute best. But for many of us, it actually becomes a cage, preventing us from moving forward.
Exactly. We convince ourselves that if we can just maintain absolute control over every aspect of our lives, we can avoid mistakes, avoid pain, and achieve some idealized state. But this pursuit of perfection is, in itself, an illusion. Life is inherently messy, unpredictable, and full of things beyond our command.
So, is perfectionism essentially a fear of not being good enough, amplified?
That's a great way to put it, Lisa. It often stems from a deep-seated belief that our worth is tied to our flawless performance. If we make a mistake, if something isn't exactly as we planned, it feels like a personal failing. This can be particularly challenging because from a young age, we're often rewarded for achievement and discouraged from errors.
I can see that. It's like we're taught that mistakes are bad, rather than opportunities to learn. Many of us internalize this, becoming incredibly hard on ourselves when things don't go perfectly.
Precisely. And this constant striving for an unattainable standard creates immense pressure. Think of it like trying to balance a stack of plates perfectly on a wobbly table. You can spend all your energy trying to keep them perfectly still, but the slightest tremor, an unexpected event, a simple oversight, can cause them to tumble. The effort to force that perfect stillness is exhausting and ultimately futile.
That's a powerful analogy. So, instead of enjoying the plates or the meal, we're just focused on the precarious balancing act.
Yes, and this illusion of control we cling to, driven by a desire for perfection, keeps us from accepting what is. We resist the reality of a situation because it might not be perfect. We replay scenarios, wondering what we could have done differently to prevent an imperfect outcome. This what if thinking, which we touched on earlier, is a hallmark of perfectionism and a direct enemy of letting go.
And this constant rumination, this need to have controlled the uncontrollable, keeps us tethered to the past, doesn't it? We can't accept the present or move towards the future if we're endlessly trying to engineer a different past.
Absolutely. It stops us from processing experiences honestly. If we can't accept that a situation wasn't perfect or that we didn't handle it with flawless grace, then we can't truly learn from it or move on. We get stuck in a loop of self-criticism and regret. This is where it links directly back to our conversation about self-judgment. Perfectionism is a major contributor to that harsh inner critic.
So, how do we begin to dismantle this illusion of control and the pursuit of perfectionism? Where do we start letting go of that need for everything to be perfect?
The first step as with so many things in letting go, is awareness. Recognizing when that perfectionist voice is hijacking your thoughts. Ask yourself, is this thought about achieving excellence or about avoiding failure? Am I being realistic or am I holding myself to an impossible standard? Sometimes, just noticing the pattern is enough to begin loosening its grip.
Mindfulness, in a way, paying attention to our internal dialogue.
Exactly. The next step is to consciously practice self-compassion. This is the antidote to the self-judgment that fuels perfectionism. When you notice a perceived imperfection, instead of berating yourself, try responding to yourself as you would a dear friend who made the same mistake. What kind of message would you offer them? Likely one of understanding and encouragement.
That feels unnatural at first, doesn't it? To be kind to yourself when you feel you've fallen short.
It can, but it's learned behavior. And it's essential. Remember, perfection is not the goal, growth is. Embracing imperfection means acknowledging that mistakes are not indictments of our character, but rather essential parts of the human experience and learning process.
So instead of saying, I always mess everything up, we can reframe it to, okay, that didn't go as planned. What can I learn from this for next time?
Precisely. And then, we need to actively cultivate a tolerance for ambiguity and uncertainty. Because perfectionism thrives on predictability and control. By allowing ourselves to be okay with not knowing all the answers, with not having every detail ironed out, we weaken the perfectionist's hold. This is a direct connection to our discussion on navigating uncertainty.
It seems like all these concepts are interconnected, like threads in a tapestry. Self-judgment, the illusion of control, perfectionism, and the fear of uncertainty. They all reinforce each other.
They absolutely do. And by working on one, you inevitably impact the others. Embracing imperfection means accepting that good enough is often truly enough. It means understanding that a life lived is often more fulfilling than a life spent in pursuit of an unachievable ideal. It's about valuing progress over flawlessness.
So, instead of aiming for a perfectly manicured garden with not a single weed, we can appreciate a garden that's thriving and alive, even with a few dandelions.
That's a beautiful metaphor. Perfectionism tells us that only the flawless garden is acceptable. Embracing imperfection allows us to appreciate the beauty and life in the garden that exists, even with its natural visitors and occasional unscripted moments. It's about celebrating the process, the effort, and the inherent goodness in simply being, rather than constantly striving for an external, often imagined, ideal.
It's about finding freedom and accepting what is, rather than being enslaved by what we wish it were. Thank you, Alex. This has been a really insightful exploration of how perfectionism can act as such a formidable barrier.
My pleasure, Lisa. Remember, the goal isn't to become less than our best, but to redefine what best truly means. It means striving, yes, but with self-compassion and an acceptance that the journey, with all its beautiful imperfections, is where life truly happens.
So, to recap, perfectionism is an illusion of control that stems from a fear of failure and fuels self-judgment. To combat it, we need to cultivate self-awareness, practice self-compassion, and develop a tolerance for uncertainty. Embracing imperfection allows us to accept what is and move forward, freeing ourselves from the exhausting pursuit of an unattainable ideal.
Well said. And that brings us to the end of this episode. Next episode, we'll explore the landscape of loss and processing grief in all its forms. Welcome back. Last time, we explored the illusion of control and the beauty of embracing imperfection. Now, we're stepping into a new, vital landscape, the landscape of loss.
That sounds like a heavy topic, Alex. When we hear loss, Most of us immediately think of death, but I know from our previous episodes that letting go encompasses so much more.
Exactly, Lisa. Grief is a natural human response to loss, but it's often misunderstood. We tend to associate grief solely with the death of a loved one. While that is a profound form of grief, it's not the only one. We grieve the loss of dreams, of opportunities, of relationships that once were, and even of past versions of ourselves. Think about it. Have you ever felt a pang of sadness for a path not taken, or a friendship that faded away? That's a form of grief.
I certainly have. There have been times I've felt a real sense of mourning for opportunities one missed, especially when I see others who pursued similar paths and found success or happiness there. It's like a phantom limb. You feel the absence of something that was once a possibility.
That's a perfect analogy, the phantom limb. It highlights how deeply we can be connected to what could have been. This kind of grief is often invisible to the outside world because it doesn't fit the conventional definition of loss. It might be the loss of a career path you always imagined, the loss of a healthy relationship you desperately wanted, or even the loss of certain milestones you expected to reach by a certain age.
So, how do we even begin to process these less visible forms of grief? They don't come with a funeral or a clear endpoint, do they?
They don't, and that's part of the challenge. The first step, as with any aspect of letting go, is acknowledging the feeling. We need to give ourselves permission to feel sad, disappointed, or even angry about these losses. It's okay to mourn the life we thought we'd have or the person we thought we would become. Imagine you've spent years building a beautiful castle in the sky, a vision of your future. If that vision shifts, or if circumstances prevent it from fully materializing, it's natural to grieve the loss of that magnificent structure.
Giving ourselves permission. That's so important because, as humans, we often judge ourselves for not being strong enough or for dwelling on things that are perhaps in the past. But if we don't acknowledge these feelings, they tend to fester, right?
Precisely. Unprocessed grief can manifest in various ways. Anxiety, unresolved anger, a persistent sense of dissatisfaction, or even physical symptoms. It's like a blocked energy flow. When we allow ourselves to feel and express the grief over lost opportunities, we're unblocking that energy. And this ties back to our earlier discussions about perfectionism and the sunk cost fallacy. We might cling to a failing endeavor because we grieve the investment of time and energy rather than acknowledging the loss and moving on.
And grief isn't linear, is it? It's not like you grieve, tick a box, and you're done. It comes in waves, sometimes unexpectedly.
Absolutely not linear. Grief is a messy, undulating process. You might feel like you've made peace with a particular loss, and then a song on the radio, a passing conversation, or even a change in season can bring it all rushing back. This is normal. It doesn't mean you're back at square one. It means you're experiencing the complexity of grieving. Think of it like tides. The tide goes out, but it always comes back in, sometimes with a little more force, sometimes gently lapping the shore. Each time it recedes. However, the shore is a little bit further along its journey of transformation.
So, when these waves hit, what's the best way to navigate them? Instead of resisting them or feeling ashamed.
The key is to acknowledge them without getting swept away. Let's use another analogy. Imagine you're walking by a river and you see a beautiful piece of driftwood floating by. You can watch it, acknowledge its presence, maybe even admire its shape, but you don't have to jump in and try to control its journey. You can observe your grief, acknowledge the emotions it brings up, sadness, regret, yearning, and then allow it to pass. This is where practices like mindfulness and journaling, which we'll delve into more deeply in later episodes, become invaluable tools.
Observing the driftwood. That's a calming image. It reframes grief not as an enemy to fight, but as a natural phenomenon to be experienced. And you mentioned grief over past versions of ourselves? That one really resonates. As we evolve, we consciously or unconsciously leave behind aspects of who we were.
Yes, we grieve the loss of our youthful energy, the loss of certain naivete, or even the loss of specific identity that no longer serves us. This is particularly relevant as we move towards redefining ourselves, a topic we'll explore in depth soon. Embracing change means letting go of who we were, and that can evoke a bittersweet feeling, a sense of loss for the familiar, even as we embrace the new.
It's like acknowledging the layers of paint on a canvas. Each layer represents a stage, and as you add new strokes, you don't erase the old ones, but they become part of the richer, more complex final image.
A beautiful way to put it, Lisa. So, to summarize this vital landscape of loss, grief is a natural response, not just to death, but to any significant perceived loss, lost opportunities, lost relationships, lost dreams, lost aspects of ourselves. It's essential to acknowledge and give ourselves permission to feel these emotions without judgment. Grief ebbs and flows, and the goal isn't to eliminate it, but to learn to navigate its waves with awareness and compassion. By doing so, we begin to process these losses, unblocking emotional energy and clearing the path for acceptance and, ultimately, forward movement.
That makes so much sense, Alex. It's about honoring what was and what could have been without letting it anchor us to the past.
Exactly. In our next discussion, we'll specifically address a concept that many people believe is the ultimate goal of grieving: closure. Instead, we'll see how the very idea of closure might be preventing us from truly healing. Happy learning! Welcome back. Last time, Lisa, we dove deep into the landscape of loss and unpacked the many forms grief can take. Today, we're continuing that exploration by looking at something intrinsically tied to loss and our ability to move forward: memory.
That's right, Alex. Memories. They're like the threads that weave our personal history together. They can be beautiful tapestries of joy, or sometimes they can feel like heavy anchors, holding us firmly in the past, especially when we're dealing with grief.
Anchors, that's a great way to put it. We often associate memories with the emotions tied to them. A scent, a song, a particular place. They can instantly transport us back to a moment, for better or worse. And when we're trying to let go of something or someone, those memories can become incredibly powerful. They can either be a gentle reminder of what was cherished or a constant, painful replay of what's lost.
Exactly. And it's not just about the sad memories, is it? Sometimes the happy memories can be just as paralyzing. We might cling to the golden days, constantly comparing the present to a seemingly perfect past, and that comparison can breed discontent and prevent us from appreciating what we have now. It's like constantly looking in the rearview mirror and wondering why we're not moving forward.
That's such a crucial point, Lisa. We might think of memories as purely factual records, but they're deeply emotional. When we're processing grief, as we discussed last episode, those memories are often intertwined with the pain of absence. So, the natural instinct could be to either push them away entirely, to try and numb the hurt, or to get lost in them, replaying scenarios, trying to find answers or a way back.
And neither of those extremes is particularly helpful for letting go, is it? Trying to erase memories feels like trying to erase a part of ourselves, and truly, that's not possible. Our memories shape who we are, but getting lost in them, constantly reliving the past, keeps us stuck. So, how do we find that balance? How do we acknowledge what was without letting it dominate what is and what can be?
It starts with acknowledgement. Instead of fighting or ignoring memories, we need to learn to see them for what they are: echoes of our experiences. They're proof that we lived, that we loved, that we felt deeply. Think of it like looking at old photographs. You can look at a photo of a happy time. You might feel a pang of nostalgia, maybe even a little sadness that the moment is gone, but you can also appreciate the beauty and significance of that memory.
So, it's about intentional viewing of these memories rather than letting them flood in uncontrollably.
Precisely. It's about choosing to engage with them consciously. This means acknowledging the good and the potentially painful. For instance, if you're grieving a lost relationship, you might acknowledge the wonderful trips you took, the laughter you shared, but also acknowledge the circumstances that led to the parting. It's about accepting the full picture, not just the parts that feel good or the parts that hurt the most.
That sounds like a step towards processing grief more fully, which connects back to our last episode. Instead of just feeling the raw emotion of loss, we're examining the experiences that created that loss.
Exactly. And this is where the idea of acknowledging what was become so important. It's not about dwelling. Dwelling implies getting stuck. Acknowledging is more about observing and understanding. It's like saying, yes, this happened. This was a part of my story. I felt X, Y, and Z at that time. It's about giving the memory its due, its space, and then allowing it to settle.
And how do we allow it to settle? Because sometimes, even when we acknowledge a memory, it can still feel very much alive and active.
That's where gentle intentionality comes in. One powerful tool is journaling. When you write about a memory, you're externalizing it. You're taking it from a swirling chaos of your mind and putting it onto paper. This act itself can create distance and clarity. You can describe the memory, the feelings it evokes, and even what you learned from it, the lessons that are now part of your wisdom.
So, journaling isn't just for processing present emotions, but also for revisiting and understanding past experiences. That makes a lot of sense. It's like you're documenting your personal history with a critical, but kind eye.
That's a perfect description, Lisa. And when you write about a memory, you can also start to reframe it. Perhaps a memory that once seemed solely negative can be seen in a new light. Maybe a difficult experience taught you resilience or forced you to develop a strength you never knew you possessed. We can acknowledge the challenge without allowing it to define us entirely.
So, instead of saying, that was a terrible time that ruined me, we might shift to, that was a tremendously difficult period, and I learned I'm much stronger than I thought.
Exactly. You're acknowledging the validity of the pain, but you're also highlighting the growth that often accompanies adversity. This kind of reframing isn't about denying the past. It's about reclaiming your narrative from it. It's about recognizing that your story is more than just one chapter, however difficult it may have been.
And this process of acknowledging and reframing memories, it feels like it's a crucial step in emotional maturity. It allows us to integrate our past experiences into our present selves without being controlled by them. It's like drawing from a rich reservoir of experience rather than being perpetually drowned by it.
That's a beautiful analogy, Lisa. It's about wisdom, not wounds. And importantly, this applies to positive memories too. Sometimes, we might put positive memories on a pedestal, creating an unrealistic expectation for the present. Acknowledging fond memories means appreciating them for what they were, without demanding that the present replicate them perfectly. Every stage of life has its own unique beauty and potential for joy.
So, to recap what we've discussed, memories are powerful anchors, both positive and negative, that shape us. When trying to let go, we can't simply erase them. Instead, the key is acknowledgement. This means consciously engaging with our memories, accepting the full picture, the good and the potentially painful. Tools like journaling can help us externalize and reframe these memories, allowing us to extract lessons and growth without becoming enslaved by the past. It's like appreciating the tapestry of our lives, understanding its threads, and then choosing to weave a new pattern if needed, rather than being held captive by the old one.
You've got it. Acknowledging what was allows us to understand where we've been, so we can more intentionally decide where we want to go. It's about honoring your past without letting it dictate your future. Next episode, the myth of closure, redefining endings. Welcome back. Last time, we explored the crucial role of memory in processing past experiences, highlighting how acknowledging what was is a vital step.
And that brought us right up to a tricky concept many people grapple with: closure. It's something we often feel we need to move on, but what does it really mean?
Exactly, Lisa. And that's precisely what we're discussing today. The myth of closure, redefining endings. Many of us have been taught that life's difficult chapters, especially those involving loss or significant endings, require a clear, definite closure. We might imagine a neat bow, a final sentence, a moment where everything suddenly makes perfect sense and we can finally move on.
It's like wanting a perfectly wrapped gift, right? You open it, and everything is tidy, all tied up with a pretty ribbon. But in reality, life rarely works that way for these big emotional events.
That's a great analogy. The truth is, the idea of a singular, definitive closure is often a myth. It's an ideal that can actually hinder our ability to heal. Why? Because it sets us up to expect something that rarely, if ever, arrives. When we're waiting for this magical moment of closure, we can remain stuck, holding on to a past that's not yet truly processed. It's like waiting for a ship that may never sail into port.
So, instead of a sudden revelation or a neat ending, we might be perpetually waiting for a feeling or a moment that doesn't come, and that just keeps us tethered to the pain or the situation.
Precisely. Think about it. When we've experienced significant grief, like we discussed a few episodes back, or navigated a difficult relationship ending, are we truly ever going to reach a point where all the questions are answered, all the emotions are neatly filed away, and every loose end is tied? Usually not. Life is far more complex and messy than that.
And if we're always chasing this elusive closure, we might miss the opportunities for genuine peace and resolution that are actually available to us.
That's the core of it. The myth of closure can lead to prolonged suffering. We might replay events endlessly, searching for a moment that confirms understanding or provides a satisfying conclusion. We might feel like we haven't moved on correctly because we haven't achieved this supposed closure. This can also manifest as a need for an apology or for the other person to finally understand the pain they caused. But these are often external factors we can't control.
So, if closure isn't this neat, definitive event, what can we aim for instead? What's the alternative for finding peace after a difficult ending?
The alternative is to redefine endings. It's about shifting our focus from a singular, external event of closure to an internal process of resolution and acceptance. Resolution is about coming to terms with what happened, even if it's not perfectly understood or resolved in the way we initially hoped. It's about finding a way to coexist with the experience and its impact on our lives, rather than needing it to be erased or perfectly concluded.
So, resolution is more about making peace with the situation, rather than making the situation disappear or getting a final answer.
Exactly. And acceptance is a key component of this resolution. It's not about liking what happened or saying it was okay. Acceptance is acknowledging reality as it is, with all its imperfections and unanswered questions. It's a conscious decision to stop fighting against what has happened and instead focus our energy on moving forward. We're accepting the situation as part of our story, not the entire story itself.
This sounds like it requires a shift in perspective. Instead of waiting for the world to provide us with a neat ending, we're looking inward to create our own sense of peace.
Precisely. And remember our discussion on memory in the last episode? Acknowledging what was helps us move towards resolution. By integrating our memories, the good, the bad, and the confusing, we can begin to build a sense of completion that isn't dependent on a perfect ending. We can integrate the experience into our life narrative.
So, it's about weaving the past into the fabric of our present and future, rather than leaving it as a torn edge.
Beautifully put. This means finding ways to let go of the need for a dramatic, final conclusion. It means understanding that peace doesn't always come with a definitive answer, but often with the capacity to live with ambiguity and to integrate difficult experiences into who we are. We can find resolution through acceptance, through allowing ourselves to feel the emotions without being consumed by them, and by focusing on what we can control, our present actions and our future intentions.
And how can we actively cultivate this sense of resolution and acceptance? What are some practical steps for listeners who might be struggling with this idea of closure?
We'll delve deeper into practical steps when we talk about journaling and practical integration in future episodes. But for today, focus on a mindset shift. When you find yourself waiting for that perfect moment of closure, gently redirect your attention. Ask yourself, what is one small step I can take now towards accepting this reality? It might be acknowledging a feeling, writing it down, or simply stating to yourself, this happened, and I am okay.
So, instead of waiting for a grand pronouncement of closure, we're looking for small acts of acceptance and integration.
Exactly. Think of it like healing a wound. It doesn't magically disappear overnight. It goes through stages: initial pain, inflammation, then tissue forming, and finally scarring and integration. The scar is a reminder that healing happened, not a sign of an incomplete healing process. Our emotional healing is similar. We don't need the wound to vanish. We need it to become a scar that we can live with.
That's a powerful image. It reframes the idea of an ending from something that needs to be perfectly erased to something that's integrated and acknowledged.
Yes, we're not aiming for the wound to never have happened, but for the wound to have healed. And healing often leaves behind a mark, a testament to the experience and the resilience it took to navigate it. So, the myth of closure can keep us searching for an impossible perfection. The reality of resolution and acceptance allows us to move forward, carrying our experiences, but not being defined or trapped by them. We can find peace without needing a final curtain call.
So, to sum up for our listeners, the idea of a clean, definitive closure is often a myth that keeps us stuck. True progress comes from redefining endings, focusing on internal resolution and acceptance. This means acknowledging our past, integrating our memories, and taking small, consistent steps towards accepting reality, even with its unanswered questions. It's about healing, not erasing.
Indeed, we can find peace and move forward by embracing the ongoing process of resolution, rather than waiting for an elusive, perfect ending.
A really important distinction to make. It shifts the power back to ourselves.
Definitely. Next episode, Navigating the Fog, Embracing Uncertainty. Welcome back to the art of letting go. Last time, we discussed redefining endings. Now, we're diving into something that often feels like the direct consequence of letting go: uncertainty.
That's right, Alex. If you decided to let go of something, a relationship, a job, a belief system, even a cherished memory, the path forward often feels unclear. It can feel like stepping into a dense fog. You know you can't stay where you were, but you can't quite see where you're going. And that, for many of us, is a deeply unsettling feeling.
It is. For a long time, we're taught to strive for certainty. We want to know what's next, have a plan, and be sure of the outcome. Certainty feels safe, secure. So, when letting go means stepping into a space where the future is unknown, it can trigger a lot of anxiety. We might start to second guess our decision or feel a pull to retreat back to the familiar, even if that familiarity was causing us pain.
It's like standing at the edge of a cliff. You know the ground behind you isn't stable, but the step into the air, even if it leads to a beautiful new landscape, is terrifying because you can't see the landing spot. So, how do we begin to navigate this fog, Alex? How do we become more comfortable with not always knowing what's next?
The first step, and this might sound a bit counterintuitive, is to acknowledge and accept that uncertainty is a natural part of life. We often resist it, fighting against the unknown as if we could somehow force clarity. But life is inherently dynamic. Change is constant, and with change comes a degree of unpredictability. Trying to eliminate uncertainty entirely is like trying to hold back the tide. It's exhausting and ultimately futile.
So instead of fighting it, we're learning to dance with it?
Exactly. Think about it this way. When you first learned to ride a bike, there was a lot of uncertainty. You wobbled, you might have fallen, and you certainly didn't know exactly how to balance or steer perfectly from the start. But with practice, with continued effort, you became more comfortable. You learned to adjust, to respond to the shifting balance, to navigate the road ahead. The uncertainty didn't disappear, but your ability to manage it grew.
That's a great analogy. And I remember that feeling, the initial fear, and then the growing confidence as you got the hang of it. It wasn't about eliminating the possibility of falling, but about trusting your developing ability to stay upright.
Precisely. In this context, what we're building is not an absence of uncertainty, but an increased tolerance for it. We are cultivating inner resilience. One of the key ways to do this is by focusing on what you can control. When the external future is foggy, we can still control our internal landscape. This means focusing on our actions, our reactions, our mindset, and our immediate next steps.
So, instead of worrying about the destination, we focus on the steps we're taking right now.
Yes, and within that, we can also lean into the practices we've discussed earlier. Remember how we talked about acknowledging what was and embracing imperfection? Those are crucial here. When we accept that things won't be perfect and that we have a history, even one that's difficult, we're less likely to be paralyzed by the fear of making a mistake in the unknown future. We understand that mistakes are part of the learning process.
That makes sense. If we're constantly striving for a perfectly certain outcome, any deviation from that feels like a failure. But if we embrace imperfection, then the wobbles and the occasional stumbles in the fog are just part of the journey, not a sign that we're lost.
Exactly. Another powerful tool is to reframe uncertainty. Instead of seeing it as a threat, can we see it as an opportunity? When the path is set and certain, there's often little room for discovery or unexpected joy. Uncertainty, on the other hand, is where possibilities lie. It's the fertile ground for new ideas, new experiences, and unexpected growth. It's the space where innovation happens.
That's a significant shift in perspective. So, when I feel that knot of anxiety because I don't know what's coming, I can try to consciously remind myself this is also an opportunity for something new and unexpected.
Yes, and that reframe takes practice. It won't happen overnight. It's about building new neural pathways. Another strategy is to break down the unknown into smaller, manageable pieces. Instead of thinking, I have no idea what my life will look like in a year, which would be overwhelming, you can ask yourself, what is one small thing I can do today to move in a direction that feels generally positive? Or what is one skill I can learn this week that might be helpful?
So, we create mini certainties within the larger uncertainty, like the little milestones on a road trip when you can't see the final destination.
Precisely. And these small actions build confidence. Each time you take a step, even if it's a small one, and the world doesn't collapse, you're gathering evidence that you can handle the uncertainty. This builds internal trust. You start to trust yourself to figure things out as you go. This is a core component of resilience.
It feels like we're building an inner compass, then, one that doesn't rely on a map, but on our ability to sense the direction and adjust as we move.
That's a beautiful way to put it, Lisa. And to further reinforce this, let's revisit the idea of memory. When we look back at times when we felt uncertain, perhaps moving to a new city, starting a new career, or going through a major life change, we often find that we navigated it successfully. Our memories might not recall every single moment of anxiety or doubt, but they often highlight our resourcefulness and eventual adaptation. Actively recalling these past successes can be a powerful anchor when facing present uncertainty.
So, we can remind ourselves, I've been in this fog before and I found my way through.
Indeed. And it's also important to be mindful of the stories we tell ourselves about uncertainty. If we constantly frame it as a disaster waiting to happen, that's the narrative our minds will latch onto. If we can shift that narrative to one of potential, of learning, and of trust in our own ability to adapt, we create a much more empowering experience. This is where mindful self-talk becomes crucial.
It's like tending a garden. We can choose to water the plants of fear and worry, or we can choose to water the plants of curiosity and self-trust.
A perfect analogy. So, to recap this part of our journey, embracing uncertainty after letting go involves several key shifts. First, we accept that uncertainty is a natural part of a dynamic life. We stop fighting it and start to learn how to move within it. Second, we focus on what we can control, our actions, reactions, and mindset. Third, we actively reframe uncertainty not as a threat, but as an opportunity for discovery and growth. Fourth, we break down the unknown into smaller, manageable steps, building confidence with each action. And finally, we cultivate a supportive internal narrative by recalling past successes and consciously choosing empowering self-talk.
That's so helpful, Alex. It's not about suddenly becoming comfortable with not knowing, but about developing the skills and the mindset to navigate it with more grace and less fear. It's an ongoing practice.
It absolutely is. And this practice of navigating the fog is going to be essential as we move forward, as we start to build and shape what comes next.
I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks for joining us on The Art of Letting Go. Next episode, Sculpting Your Future, Redefining Your Identity. Welcome back. Last time we explored embracing uncertainty. Today, we're diving into journaling for emotional release.
Journaling. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? But I think many people underestimate how transformative a regular writing practice can be.
Absolutely, Lisa. Think of your journal as a private, non-judgmental space. It's where you can unpack the weight of your thoughts and feelings without any filters. We've talked extensively about understanding attachment styles, confronting the sunk cost fallacy, and even processing grief. Journaling is a fantastic way to actively engage with all of those concepts.
So, it's not just about dumping your problems onto paper, it's about actively working through them.
Exactly. It's about externalizing what's internal. When we write things down, we create a tangible record. This can help us identify patterns in our thinking and behavior that we might otherwise miss. Remember when we discussed how our past experiences, even those we've grieved over, can shape our present reactions? Journaling can help us see those connections more clearly.
That makes sense. It's like holding up a mirror to our inner world. But where do we start? For someone who hasn't journaled before, or perhaps tried and found it difficult, what's a good entry point?
A great starting point is simply to write freely, what we call a brain dump. Set a timer for 5 or 10 minutes and just let your thoughts flow. Don't worry about grammar, spelling, or even making perfect sense. The goal here is simply to get whatever is swirling around in your head down onto the page.
Just letting it all out, unfiltered. That sounds delightfully messy and liberating.
It is. And once you've done that initial dump, you can start to explore more specific prompts. These prompts act like guided questions, helping you to dig a little deeper. For instance, related to our discussions on forgiveness, both for others and ourselves, you might ask, what is one thing I'm holding on to that I'm ready to release? Or, what is a gentle affirmation I can offer myself today?
I like that. It reframes it as a positive action, moving towards release and self-compassion, rather than dwelling on the negative. You mentioned patterns earlier. How does journaling help with that?
By reviewing your entries over time, you can spot recurring themes. Are you frequently writing about feeling inadequate in certain situations? That could be an indicator of an underlying belief about yourself that you might want to address. Are you often writing about feeling controlled or unable to make decisions? That connects back to our discussions on the illusion of control and embracing uncertainty.
So, the journal acts as a kind of personal feedback loop. It helps us see ourselves more objectively.
Precisely. And this objectivity is crucial for emotional release. When we can see our feelings and thought processes laid out in front of us, they often lose some of their power. They become less like overwhelming internal storms and more like observable phenomena. This allows us to engage with them more constructively rather than being swept away by them.
It also creates space. When we're holding on to so much mentally and emotionally, there's no room for anything new. Writing it out, as you said, externalizes it, making that space.
You've hit on a key point, Lisa. It makes room. Room for new perspectives, room for healing, and room for the future. Consider the sunk cost fallacy. When you journal about a situation where you feel you've invested too much to quit, you can start to examine those investments, time, energy, emotion, and ask yourself what the actual cost is of continuing versus the benefit of letting go. This kind of analytical writing allows you to detach from the emotional investment and look at it with more logic.
And that connects to the idea of redefining endings that we touched upon. Journaling can help us articulate what that ending truly means to us and what we want the next chapter to look like.
Absolutely. Let's move to a prompt related to processing grief. Try writing about a cherished memory, and then, alongside it, write about the feelings that memory evokes for you in this moment. This acknowledges what was while being present with what is. It's about honoring the past without being tethered to it.
That's a beautiful way to put it. So, we have the brain dump, and then we have these more directed prompts around forgiveness, control, and grief. What else can journaling help us uncover?
It's a powerful tool for understanding our attachment styles. When you're feeling anxious in a relationship, for example, you can jot down precisely what you're feeling, what triggered it, and what your immediate impulse is. Seeing this written down can reveal patterns that align with insecure attachment, giving you the insight needed to consciously choose a different response. It's about moving from reactive to responsive.
So, journaling isn't just a one-off exercise. It's a practice that builds self-awareness over time. It's a way to keep integrating all the concepts we've been discussing.
Precisely. It's a continuous process of self-discovery and release. The key is consistency. Even if it's just for a few minutes each day, make that time sacred. Treat your journal as your trusted ally in the art of letting go. It's your personal brushstroke on the canvas of change, allowing you to paint a clearer picture of your inner world and, by extension, your path forward.
So, to recap, journaling offers a private space for emotional release through brain dumps and guided prompts. It helps us identify patterns related to attachment, sunk costs, and our experiences of grief. By externalizing our thoughts and feelings, we gain objectivity, create space for new perspectives, and consciously move towards a more responsive way of being.
Exactly. It's a tangible way to practice what we've been talking about throughout this journey. It's about actively engaging with your inner landscape and making conscious choices about what you carry forward. Next episode, Sculpting Your Future, Redefining Your Identity. Welcome back to the Art of Letting Go. Last time, we explored the powerful tool of journaling for release.
That's right, Alex. And today, we're building on that foundation of untangling. If journaling is like clearing away the clutter, then today's topic is about what we can build in the space that's created. We're talking about sculpting your future by redefining your identity.
Sculpting our future. I love that imagery, Lisa. It suggests intention, creativity, and a very active role in shaping what's to come. Often, when we've gone through significant letting go, whether it's a relationship, a job, or even a long-held belief, we can feel a little adrift, like a sculptor who's just chipped away all the excess stone but is staring at a blank form.
Exactly. And sometimes we don't even realize how much our sense of self has been tied to those things we've let go of. We might have defined ourselves by our role as a partner, a parent, an employee, or even by our struggles and past hurts. When those aspects fade, it can feel like our very identity is dissolving.
It's a vulnerable place to be, isn't it? But it's also incredibly liberating. Think about it. For so long, we might have been unconsciously sculpted by our circumstances, our attachments, and our history. Now we have the chisel and the mallet. We get to decide what the finished piece looks like.
This really connects back to our earlier discussions on attachment styles. If we've spent a lot of time in an anxious or avoidant attachment, our sense of self might have been built around seeking or avoiding connection, rather than being a strong, independent core. Letting go of those patterns is the first step to a more authentic identity.
Absolutely. And remember when we discussed the sunk cost fallacy? We can also get trapped by defining ourselves by the effort we've already put into something, even if it's no longer serving us. I've invested so much into this life, into this role, we might think. Letting go allows us to shed that definition and embrace a new one that aligns with our present and future aspirations.
So, how do we start this sculpting process? How do we redefine who we are when so much of our who has been tied to what we're letting go of?
The first step, as we've emphasized throughout this series, is acknowledgement. Acknowledge that your identity can and should evolve. It's not a fixed statue, but a living, breathing entity. This is where embracing imperfection, which we discussed, becomes crucial. We don't need to have a perfectly formed new identity overnight.
That's a relief. I think many people expect a grand revelation of their new self. But you're saying it's more of a gradual process, much like sculpting. You chip away, you refine, you smooth.
Precisely. And to refine, we need to consciously cultivate new narratives. Our old identity might have been filled with stories of what we couldn't do or what we lacked. The new identity is about exploring what we can do, what we are curious about, and what brings us joy. This is where a forward-focused mindset really begins to take root.
So, instead of saying, I'm the person who is hurt, we can start saying, I'm the person who healed and learned, or I'm the person who is exploring new passions.
Exactly. It's about shifting the internal dialogue. And this isn't about pretending past experiences didn't happen. We've talked extensively about processing grief and acknowledging what was. Those memories are part of our story, but they don't have to be the entire story. We can integrate them as chapters, not the whole book.
This concept of integration is so important. It's like weaving in threads of our past experiences, both the joyful and the challenging, into a new tapestry of self. It's not about erasing, but about recontextualizing.
A beautiful metaphor, Lisa, and consider how we've discussed letting go of the illusion of control. When we release the need to control every outcome, we open ourselves up to discover new aspects of ourselves that we never knew existed. We might find we're more resilient, more creative, or more adaptable than we ever imagined. Our identity expands beyond the limitations we previously imposed.
This is where the hard work of processing grief, especially, comes into play. When we've grieved a loss, we've essentially shed a part of ourselves that was connected to that loss. Redefining our identity after grief isn't about forgetting, but about finding our footing again, knowing that we carry the lessons and the love forward in a transformed way.
Absolutely. And even the concept of closure, which we dispelled in episode 9, plays a role here. True closure isn't necessarily a grand, definitive ending. It's the ability to move forward with a redefined sense of self, carrying the essence of what was, but not being shackled by it. When we redefine our identity, we inherently create a sense of moving forward.
So, to summarize for our listeners, redefining your identity after letting go involves: first, acknowledging that identity is fluid and evolving. Second, consciously shifting your internal narrative from past limitations to future possibilities. Third, integrating past experiences as valuable lessons, not defining limitations. And fourth, embracing flexibility and allowing for self-discovery rather than demanding a perfect, preformed new self.
That's a fantastic summary, Lisa. It's about becoming the conscious sculptor of your own life. You're not just a passive recipient of experiences. You're an active creator of your future self. This is truly the art of letting go, not just releasing the old, but actively, intentionally building the new.
It feels like this episode is the bridge between the release and the rebuilding. We've cleared the space, and now we're learning how to build the structure of our new self.
Next episode, the palette of possibilities, diving deeper into embracing that forward-focused mindset and how to cultivate a rich internal landscape of opportunities.
I'm really looking forward to that. Thanks for listening.
Welcome back. Last time we redefined identity. Today, we're painting a vibrant future with episode 13, the palette of possibilities, embracing a forward-focused mindset.
That's such a beautiful metaphor, Alex. A palette of possibilities. It feels so much more hopeful than dwelling on what's behind us. After all the work we've done on letting go, it makes sense that the next step is actively looking ahead.
Exactly, Lisa. Letting go isn't just about shedding the past. It's about creating space for something new. And to do that effectively, we need to cultivate a mindset that's geared towards the future. Think about it. If you're always looking in the rearview mirror, you're bound to hit something.
So, how do we shift our focus from the rear view to the windshield? It sounds simple, but for many of us, it's incredibly hard. Our habits, our worries, our attachments, they can keep us stuck.
You're absolutely right. It requires intentional practice. One of the most powerful ways to embrace a forward-focused mindset is through what I call future framing. This means actively imagining and engaging with your desired future. It's not just wishful thinking. It's a deliberate mental exercise.
Future framing. I like that. Can you give us an example? How would someone do that?
Imagine you have a goal, say, learning a new skill. Instead of just thinking, I wish I could do that, future framing means vividly picturing yourself already proficient. What does it feel like to master that skill? What opportunities does it open up? Who are you interacting with? Engage all your senses in this imagined future.
So, it's like a mental rehearsal? You're not just thinking about the outcome, but the experience of achieving it. That makes it feel more real and attainable, doesn't it?
Precisely. And this practice helps to rewire your brain. When you consistently focus on a positive future, your subconscious mind starts to align your actions and thoughts with that vision. It's like providing a clear destination for your efforts.
I can see how that would create momentum. If you're constantly visualizing success, you're naturally going to be more motivated to take the steps needed to get there.
Absolutely. Now, another key element is challenging our negative thought patterns about the future. Often, when we think about what's to come, we anticipate problems. We think, what if this goes wrong? Or I'm not good enough. These are forward-looking fears.
Oh, I'm definitely guilty of that. It's like a default setting for some of us. How do we counter those what if worries?
We need to become aware of them, first and foremost. Notice when those anxious thoughts about the future arise. Then, you can gently question them. Ask yourself, what evidence do I have that this negative outcome will happen? More often than not, the evidence is thin, and it's based on past experiences or generalized anxieties.
So, instead of just accepting the anxious thought, we actively challenge its validity. That's a powerful shift.
It is. And another technique that's incredibly useful is setting small, achievable goals. This builds a sense of progress and accomplishment. When you consistently achieve small wins, your belief in your ability to shape your future grows. Remember how we talked about sculpting your future identity? This is how you start adding those chisel marks.
That's a great callback to the previous discussion. So, the idea is to break down bigger aspirations into bite-sized pieces. That feels much less overwhelming.
Exactly. And when those small goals are aligned with your future vision, each one becomes a step forward, reinforcing your forward-focused mindset. We're talking about building habits here, habits that support your desired future. This isn't about one grand gesture. It's about consistent, small actions.
Habits. That's a word that can sometimes feel daunting. But if we think of them as building blocks for our future, it changes the perspective.
It does. Think of it like laying down a path. Each habit you build is another stone laid on that path, making it easier to walk towards your goals. This might mean dedicating 15 minutes each day to learning that new skill or making a conscious effort to reframe one negative thought each morning. The key is consistency.
And this forward focused mindset also helps us deal with unexpected detours. Because even with the best plans, life throws curveballs.
Absolutely. When you're accustomed to looking ahead with optimism and adaptability, challenges are seen less as roadblocks and more as opportunities to learn and adjust. You're not so easily derailed because your internal compass is already pointing forward. You've already practiced embracing uncertainty in previous discussions. Remember? This builds on that.
That's so true. We've learned it's okay not to have all the answers. And a forward focused mindset allows us to approach those unknowns with more confidence, knowing we can figure things out as we go.
Precisely. It's about cultivating a sense of agency. You are the artist of your future, and the palette of possibilities is spread before you. You get to choose the colors, the strokes, the composition. This proactive stance is liberating.
So, to recap for our listeners, to embrace a forward focused mindset, we need to practice future framing, actively visualizing our desired outcomes. We also need to consciously challenge negative thoughts about the future. And importantly, we build momentum by setting small, achievable goals that create positive habits aligned with our aspirations.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. It's about shifting from a reactive stance to a creative one. It's about believing in your ability to influence what's to come, not by controlling it, but by actively and optimistically engaging with it. This is how we continue to move forward, not just accepting change, but actively shaping our future.
It feels like we've painted a beautiful, hopeful picture of what comes after letting go. It's not an ending, but truly a new beginning, with a whole palette of colors to choose from.
The next episode will explore concrete steps for building these forward-focused habits and sustaining your momentum. Happy learning! Welcome back. Last time we covered embracing a forward-focused mindset. Now let's tackle building the foundation for our freedom.
It's episode 14, and I feel like we've journeyed through so much already. We've unpacked attachment styles, wrestled with the sunk cost fallacy, explored forgiveness in its many forms, and learned to navigate uncertainty. Now, it's about making it all stick, right? It's about building real freedom.
Exactly, Lisa. Think of all the concepts we've discussed as building blocks. Now, we're laying the foundation to ensure those blocks create a stable, lasting structure. Freedom isn't just an idea, it's a practice. It requires intentionality and consistent effort. We need to move from understanding to doing.
So, how do we do that? What are the practical steps to make letting go a habitual way of life, rather than just a temporary solution?
Let's start with a concept we introduced early on, mindful awareness. This is central to integrating any practice of letting go. It means paying attention to your thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations without judgment. When we become aware of when we're clinging, when we're rehashing the past, or when we're resisting change, we create the space to choose a different response.
Mindful awareness. I remember we talked about how it's like observing clouds passing in the sky. You see them, you acknowledge them, but you don't try to grab them or stop them from moving.
That's a perfect analogy. So, the first practical step is to cultivate daily mindfulness practice. This could be through meditation, even just 5 minutes a day, or by bringing mindful awareness to everyday activities like eating, walking, or listening. The goal is to strengthen your ability to notice your internal experience as it unfolds.
Okay, so step one, cultivate mindful awareness. Notice what's happening internally and externally without judgment. What's next on our foundation building plan?
Next, we need to actively reframe our narratives. Remember how we discussed how our stories about past events or future possibilities can keep us tethered? We need to consciously shift these narratives from ones of limitation or regret to ones of learning and possibility.
This connects to what we discussed about the sunk cost fallacy and also our early work on attachment styles. If our story is, I have to do this because I've invested so much, that's a limiting narrative.
Precisely. So, a practical step here is journaling with intention. When you feel stuck, ask yourself, what story am I telling myself about this situation? How is this story serving me? What is an alternative, more empowering story I could tell? This isn't about pretending problems don't exist. It's about choosing a perspective that fosters growth and movement.
So, step two is to reframe your narratives, perhaps through intentional journaling, to shift from limiting stories to empowering ones. I can see how that would really help dismantle those invisible chains we talked about.
Absolutely. Our third practical step is to practice radical acceptance. This builds on our discussions about grief and uncertainty. Radical acceptance doesn't mean liking the situation or condoning it. It means acknowledging reality as it is, without resistance. Resistance is a huge energy drain and a major barrier to letting go.
This sounds hard. How do we practically do radical acceptance when something is painful or unfair?
It is challenging, and it's a skill that develops over time. A technique is to repeatedly say to yourself, this is happening. When you're faced with a difficult truth, pause, breathe, and simply state, this is happening. You can follow it with, my feelings about this are okay, acknowledging your emotional response without letting it dictate your actions. Remember, acceptance is the first step toward effective action, not giving up.
Radical acceptance. Acknowledge the reality. Your feelings about it are valid, but don't let resistance hold you captive. That's a powerful tool.
It is. And woven through all of this is the practice of self-compassion. We've touched on this with forgiving ourselves. When we stumble, when we find ourselves falling back into old patterns, it's natural to feel frustration or self-criticism. Self-compassion means treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer to a dear friend.
This is so important. We can be our own harshest critics. What does self-compassion look like in practice?
It looks like recognizing that imperfection is part of the human experience. As we discussed with imperfection, it means acknowledging your struggle without harsh judgment. It can involve a simple internal mantra like, this is a moment of suffering. Suffering is a part of life. May I be kind to myself in this moment? Or even physically placing your hand over your heart as a gesture of comfort.
So, step four, practice self-compassion. Be kind to yourself, especially when you're struggling or make a mistake. Acknowledge that imperfection is normal.
And finally, a crucial practical step is to take inspired action. Letting go isn't about passivity. It's about creating space for new possibilities to emerge and then acting on opportunities that align with your values and your forward-focused mindset.
This brings us back to the idea of a forward-focused mindset, building our future, not just dwelling on the past. What kind of inspired action are we talking about?
It's about making small, deliberate choices that move you in the direction you want to go. If you've let go of a career path that no longer serves you, inspired action might be signing up for a course in a new field, networking with people in your desired industry, or dedicating an hour each week to exploring new opportunities. It's about listening to your intuition and acting on what feels right and generative.
So, step 5, take inspired action. Make conscious, small choices that move you towards your desired future. It's about engaging with your new possibilities.
My hope is that by breaking these down into actionable steps, it feels more manageable. Let's quickly recap these foundational pillars of building freedom. First, cultivate mindful awareness to consistently observe your internal state. Second, reframe your narratives by challenging limiting stories and choosing empowering ones, perhaps through journaling. Third, practice radical acceptance by acknowledging reality without resistance. Fourth, practice self-compassion by treating yourself with kindness, especially during difficult times. And fifth, take inspired action by making deliberate choices that move you forward.
Mindful awareness, reframing narratives, radical acceptance, self compassion, and inspired action. These 5 principles feel like a solid roadmap for anyone wanting to truly integrate the art of letting go. They're not one time fixes, but ongoing practices.
Exactly. They're the cornerstones of building a life where you are not defined or constrained by what you need to release. They help you stand firmly on the ground of the present, ready for whatever comes.
It feels like we're really solidifying the framework. We've spent so much time dissecting the what and why of letting go. Now we're getting to the how.
And the how is what truly empowers us to sustain this practice. It's about creating habits and internal mechanisms that support our journey. These steps are designed to be integrated gradually. Don't aim for perfection, aim for progress.
That's a wonderful reminder, Alex. Progress over perfection.
Next episode, the canvas of connection, letting go in relationships. Welcome back. Last time, we laid out the groundwork for integrating these powerful practices into our daily lives.
Indeed. And today, we're bringing all of these threads together into perhaps one of the most complex and rewarding areas of our lives, our relationships. We're talking about the canvas of connection and how letting go applies to the people we share our lives with.
Relationships are where so much of our joy comes from, but also where some of our most profound attachments can form. And when we talk about letting go, it's easy to think of it as something solitary, an internal process. But so much of our journey involves other people.
Absolutely. And this isn't necessarily about letting go in the sense of ending relationships, though sometimes that's necessary. It's more about letting go of the unhealthy patterns within relationships, the expectations that no longer serve us, and the resistance to the natural evolution of our connections. We've talked a lot about growth, and growth often means change, and that change naturally ripples into our relationships.
That's a great point, Lisa. Remember when we discussed the sunk cost fallacy? We can fall into that trap in relationships too. We might stay in a connection or maintain a certain dynamic within it because of how much time and energy we've already invested. We might say, we've been friends for so long, or we've been together for years.
And that's a perfectly natural inclination. We value loyalty and history. But if that investment is keeping us from being our authentic selves, or if the relationship itself is no longer nurturing, that's where the letting go comes in. It's about letting go of the obligation to maintain a certain status quo, and instead, embracing what the relationship is now, or what it could be if we release those old, heavy expectations.
Precisely. And this applies to all kinds of relationships, romantic partnerships, friendships, family dynamics. In romantic partnerships, for example, we might need to let go of the idea of a perfect partner or a fairy tale ending. We need to accept that our partners are human, with flaws, and that the relationship itself will ebb and flow. Letting go of rigid expectations allows for deeper acceptance and a more resilient bond.
And for friendships, it's about recognizing that as we grow and change, our needs and interests might diverge. It's okay to have friendships that are different from what they once were. We might need to let go of the pressure to be the same best friends we were in high school and instead embrace a friendship that is more about mutual respect and appreciation for who we are today.
That's so important. And for family, this can be particularly challenging. We often have deeply ingrained ideas about what family relationships should be. Letting go here might mean releasing the need for external validation from family or forgiving past hurts that have colored our perception, allowing for a more peaceful and authentic connection moving forward.
This ties back beautifully to what we discussed about self-forgiveness and releasing self-judgment. Often, we judge ourselves for how we handle relationships, or we judge others for not meeting our expectations. Letting go in relationships often starts with letting go of that internal critic and extending grace, both to ourselves and to others.
And it's a continuous process. It's not a one-time event. We're constantly navigating the dynamics of connection. It's about making conscious choices. When a conversation or an interaction starts to feel heavy or brings up old patterns, can we pause and ask ourselves, what am I holding on to here? What expectation am I resisting?
That pause is crucial. It's that moment where we can choose a different response. Instead of reacting from a place of unmet need or old hurt, we can respond from a place of conscious awareness. Remember how we talked about embracing uncertainty? This is where that skill really shines. We don't have to have all the answers about where a relationship is going. We can simply be present with what is.
And when we talk about letting go within relationships, it's also about cultivating a healthy sense of self. When we have a strong sense of our own identity, our own values, and our own needs, which we explore like sculpting our future identity, we're less likely to become overly dependent on others for validation or to mold ourselves into someone we're not to fit into a relationship.
That's a fantastic point, Alex. It's like having a strong foundation. When you know who you are, you can connect with others more authentically. You're not looking for them to complete you. You're looking to share your completeness. That's a huge shift. And it allows us to let go of the fear of abandonment or the desperate need for approval in relationships.
And even when a relationship does end, whether it's a breakup, a drifting apart, or the loss of a loved one, the principles we've covered still apply. We need to acknowledge the grief. We need to remember the good without getting stuck in the past. And we need to redefine what closure means for ourselves, understanding it's not always a neat bow, but a personal integration.
So, to recap today's discussion on the canvas of connection, letting go in relationships isn't about severing ties indiscriminately. It's about releasing unhealthy attachments, rigid expectations, and old patterns that no longer serve us. It's about embracing change, fostering authentic connection, and grounding ourselves in our own sense of self. It's about extending grace and practicing conscious responses rather than automatic reactions.
It's about allowing our connections to evolve organically, embracing the present reality of those relationships, and nurturing bonds based on mutual respect and genuine appreciation. It's a vital part of living a life where we can truly let go and move forward.
This episode really brings home the point that letting go is not about isolation, but about finding a more profound and authentic way to connect with ourselves and with others.
Next episode, how to sustain the momentum we've built throughout this series and continue our journey of living more freely. Welcome back. Last time we explored integrating our newfound practices. Today, we're looking beyond the horizon, sustaining momentum.
It's so important, Alex. We've covered so much ground. Understanding attachment, confronting fallacies, practicing forgiveness, embracing imperfection, and navigating grief. We've even talked about identity and forward-focused mindsets. But the real challenge, as we know, is making these shifts last. It's easy to feel motivated for a while, but life has a way of throwing us curveballs, doesn't it?
Absolutely, Lisa. And that's exactly what this episode is about. Anticipating those curveballs and developing the resilience to keep moving forward, even when the path gets a little bumpy. Sustaining momentum isn't about never stumbling. It's about knowing how to get back up and keep walking.
So, what's the first step in ensuring we don't lose the progress we've made? How do we keep that forward-focused mindset we discussed from fading away?
The first step is acknowledging that setbacks are not failures. They are simply part of the process. Think of it like learning to ride a bike. You didn't just hop on and ride perfectly the first time, did you? There were wobbles, maybe a few falls, but each one taught you something about balance. Releasing past attachments and embracing a new way of being is a similar journey.
That's a great analogy. So, we need to reframe our perspective on challenges. Instead of seeing a moment of old behavior, like falling back into old patterns of worry or judgment, as a sign that we're back at square one, we see it as feedback.
Precisely. We see as feedback. When you notice yourself reacting with an old insecurity or holding on to something you intended to release, ask yourself, what can I learn from this moment? Is there a trigger you can identify? Is there an underlying belief that needs more attention? This isn't about self-criticism, but about gentle, curious inquiry. We're not trying to be perfect. We're trying to be present and responsive.
That gentle inquiry sounds key. It's like being a detective for your own growth. And I remember when we talked about embracing imperfection and the illusion of control. This ties in perfectly, doesn't it? We can't control every single outcome, but we can control our response and our continued commitment to the practices.
Exactly. And that brings us to the importance of regular practice. Just like physical exercise, the benefits of letting go are cumulative and require consistent effort. We need to build small, sustainable habits into our daily lives. This could be a few minutes of mindfulness each morning, a quick journaling session at lunchtime, or a deliberate moment of gratitude before bed.
So, not necessarily huge, overwhelming changes, but small, consistent actions. What are some examples of these sustainable practices you're talking about?
One powerful practice is what I call relapse prevention planning. Before you even encounter a difficult situation, think about what might trigger you. For example, if you know a certain conversation often leads to defensiveness, perhaps you can prepare a few phrases to help you stay centered, like, I hear what you're saying, or let me take a moment to process that. It's about having a pre-planned response ready.
That's so practical. It's like having a toolkit ready before you go out into a storm. And it sounds like actively engaging with our forward-focused mindset. Instead of just hoping we'll react differently, we're actively preparing ourselves to do so.
Yes, it's proactive preparedness. Another crucial element is nurturing our support system. Remember when we discussed letting go in relationships? The same principle applies here. A strong, supportive network is vital for sustaining momentum. Share your journey with trusted friends or family, or consider joining a support group or a community that shares similar goals.
Having people who understand and can offer encouragement can make a world of difference. When you feel like you're slipping, knowing you can reach out for a little support can be incredibly motivating. It reinforces that you're not alone in this.
And it's not just about seeking support when things are tough. It's also about celebrating the small wins. Acknowledge your progress, no matter how minor it may seem. Did you avoid a regretful impulse? Did you choose a more constructive response? Take a moment to appreciate that. This positive reinforcement helps build confidence and reinforces the new behaviors.
That's a wonderful reminder. We often get so caught up in striving for the next big milestone that we forget to appreciate how far we've already come. It's like climbing a mountain and only looking at the summit, forgetting to notice the incredible views along the way.
Exactly. And speaking of the journey, it's also important to remember that this is a continuous process of growth and evolution. There isn't a final destination where you've finished letting go. It's more about developing a lifelong capacity to navigate life's complexities with greater peace and freedom.
So, it's about cultivating a specific kind of resilience, one that acknowledges challenges, learns from them, involves regular practice, prepares for difficulties, leans on support, celebrates progress, and understands that growth is ongoing.
You've summarized it beautifully, Lisa. It's about weaving these practices into the fabric of your life, rather than treating them as separate tasks. When you can integrate the principles of mindfulness, self-compassion, and a forward-focused perspective into your everyday interactions and decisions, you build a sustainable momentum that carries you forward beyond the horizon. Ultimately, it's about creating a life where letting go becomes less of a struggle and more of a natural, empowering way of being.
It's a powerful way to live. Looking ahead, this means continuing to practice that gentle self-inquiry, leaning on our community, and always remembering that every step forward, no matter how small, is progress.
Next episode, we'll wrap up our series by exploring how the art of letting go contributes to a life of renewal and fullness. Welcome back to the Art of Letting Go, our final episode in this series.
It's hard to believe this is our last episode together. We've covered so much ground, Alex, from understanding attachment to embracing imperfection.
We have Lisa, and today we're going to tie all those threads together. We'll revisit the core ideas and emphasize that letting go isn't about forgetting or erasing the past, but about transforming it into a foundation for a more vibrant future. Think of it like this. We spent the whole series learning to carefully unpack a heavy, cluttered suitcase. Now we're going to see how light and free we feel and how much easier it is to step forward with a lighter load.
That's a great analogy. So, where do we begin today? What's the big takeaway from all our discussions?
The biggest takeaway is that letting go is an active, ongoing art form. It's not a one-time event, but a continuous practice. When we started, we talked about the weight of things we hold onto: old hurts, expectations, even our own rigid self-definitions. Remember in the first episode, we called that unpacking the weight.
Yes. And we learned that this weight often comes from our invisible chains, our attachment styles, which we explored in the second episode. Understanding if we tend to cling or withdraw is such a crucial first step.
Absolutely. And then we tackled the difficult emotions, the sunk cost fallacy in the third episode, that trap of thinking we have to keep investing in something because we've already put so much in.
That one really resonated with me. It's so easy to get stuck in the what if of past decisions.
Exactly. And that led us to the power of release, specifically through forgiveness, both for others in the fourth episode and critically for ourselves in the fifth episode. Releasing self-judgment is a key component of truly letting go.
And how we embraced imperfection along the way, realizing that the illusion of control is just that, an illusion. The sixth episode felt like a big permission slip to just be human.
A very important permission slip. Then we dove deep into the landscape of loss and grief, acknowledging what was and understanding that grief takes many forms, as we discussed in the seventh and eighth episodes. It's not just about death. It's about the loss of dreams or versions of ourselves.
And the idea that there's no magical closure in the ninth episode. That was a game changer for many listeners, I'm sure. It reframed endings as transitions rather than definitive stops.
It certainly did. And that naturally led us to navigating the fog of uncertainty in the 10th episode. When we let go of needing everything to be predictable, we open ourselves up to possibilities.
Then we moved into the practical tools. Journaling, as we discussed in the 11th episode, became our brushstroke of change, helping us physically move thoughts and feelings onto paper and out of our minds.
and sculpting our future in the 12th episode. Letting go of who we thought we had to be allows us to redefine our identity in a much more authentic way.
which then paints the palette of possibilities. The 13th episode was all about embracing that forward focused mindset, seeing the what now instead of the what was.
Precisely. And by the 14th episode, we were building the foundation of freedom. We talked about practical steps to integrate these ideas, building new habits, setting boundaries, and creating routines that support our growth.
And remember the canvas of connection in the 15th episode? How letting go plays out in our relationships. Releasing expectations and control within our bonds allows for deeper, more authentic connections.
A truly vital aspect. And in our last episode before this one, the 16th episode, we looked beyond the horizon, talking about sustaining that momentum. It's about recognizing that letting go is a lifelong practice, not a destination.
So, Alex, after all these episodes, what's the overarching message for us as we conclude this series? How do we truly live fully now?
The art of living fully, as our title suggests, is the ultimate outcome of mastering the art of letting go. It means waking up each day with an openness to experience. It means acknowledging our past without being tethered to it. It means embracing the uncertainty of the future with courage, not fear. It means being present in our relationships, and most importantly, being present with ourselves.
So, it's about integrating all these lessons into our daily lives, not just as concepts, but as lived experiences.
Exactly. When you forgive, you're not excusing behavior. You're releasing yourself from the burden of anger. When you embrace uncertainty, you're not accepting chaos. You're opening yourself to serendipity. When you redefine your identity, you're not losing who you are. You're discovering a more expansive version.
It's a continuous process of renewal, then. Letting go creates space. Space for new thoughts, new feelings, new experiences, and new connections.
That's the essence of it. We've learned to let go of the weight, the chains, the illusions, the grief, the need for absolute control, and the fear of the unknown. We've learned to forgive, to change our perspective, to redefine ourselves, and to build healthier connections. Each step has prepared us for this moment.
It feels like we're standing on a mountaintop, looking out at a beautiful, expansive landscape after a long climb.
A perfect image, Lisa, and that landscape is yours to explore. The tools and understandings we've shared are not just for overcoming specific challenges, but for living a life that is richer, more authentic, and more joyfully present. Remember, letting go is not an end, but a spectacular beginning. It clears the path for you to truly live fully.
Thank you, Alex, for guiding us through this transformative series. And thank you to all our listeners for joining us on this journey. It's been an honor to explore the art of letting go with you.
Indeed, we hope the lessons learned here serve as a lifelong guide to freedom and fulfillment. Thanks for listening to the series.